One Piece is the only anime series I know where most people agree that it's one of the most amazing series out there, but at the same time, nobody wants to start it because of how long it is. Especially if you're an anime only fan, you'll be sitting through more flashbacks and drawn out scenes than you can imagine.
But now we're gonna go over here and see Dylan trying to get a ball out of a tree. We're gonna waste about 10 minutes on this scene for absolutely no reason.
And while I'm still on my journey to finally getting caught up eventually, I still can't help but come back to the game series that fed me most of my One Piece knowledge to this day. Now I'm sure that you guys all know the deal with these Pirate Warriors games by now. Just like many other Warriors titles out there, this is a fun way to experience moments from the story, battle hordes of enemies, and mindlessly grind for hours on end. But we'll talk more about that later, because it's been about 8 years since I last talked about a game in the Pirate Warrior series, and I'm hyped to jump back into it. So let's start off with what the story here is going to cover. The main campaign loosely follows the overall plot of One Piece while skipping past quite a few of the arcs and getting to the more recent parts of the story. You'll see Alabasta, Enies Lobby, the Paramount War, Dressrosa, Whole Cake Island, and a version of Wano that's obviously not complete. And it does suck when these games can't feel complete just because they get released before the anime or manga arcs can finish. While they do have DLC available that adds in more characters from Wano, it does suck that this doesn't cover everything all the way up to Luffy's new transformation. Also, side note, but I've seen people discuss how we should be getting Pirate Warriors 5 soon, and I feel like that's way too soon. Because Wano ended not too long ago, and what, are you just gonna have a whole new game covering half an arc? Hopefully we will see more in this series going forward, especially with the power of the PS5 behind it all. But until that day does come, I don't think that this story mode was bad at all. Like, yeah, sure, it did skip past a lot of the arcs leading up until the time skip, such as Fishman Island, and of course everyone's favorite, Thriller Bark. But you can and should play the previous 3 games if you really want to see most of those arcs again. Now I like to see these games as the Cliff Notes version of the anime or manga, since after playing them I'll have a halfway decent knowledge of the arcs they cover. Because nothing can really replace the feeling of watching or reading it firsthand, but it's good for those who want a quick taste of the story or even a refresher. And usually I would love to see them cram every arc possible into one package, but I would much rather see them polish the arcs that they did put in there than to half-ass it so they can fit the full story into one game. And hey, who knows, maybe we'll see this get the Storm Connections treatment one day, and they'll compile every game into one remastered package and have every character available and have tons of arcs and tons of maps and everything else. I highly doubt that'll happen, but a dreamer can dream. But moving on to the gameplay, it's just about what you'd expect. If you've played one Warriors game, then you've basically played them all, so there's not much special with the basic combos in combat. You fight hundreds of dudes, you defend and capture bases, you complete objectives, and you rinse and repeat that for hours and hours. But here things get really spicy when you start to look at the new systems put in place. One of the most interesting parts is the variety of skill trees. You have multiple maps, the first being universal for every single character, and then additional skill trees that are specific to everyone that you can play as. So you're driven to fill out that first map as much as you possibly can so all of your characters are on a more even playing field. But when it comes to your favorites, you can be more precise about who you want to devote more of your resources to. And obviously, since you'll play as Luffy more than anyone else, it does make sense to give a lot of your resources to him, at least as you play through the story mode. But if you love to play as Carrot or Zoro or Katakuri, you'll want to max them out properly on their own. After a while, you'll end up needing to grind for materials just so you can level up every character, but just for the story mode alone, you'll want to focus on a few characters at a time. Within each character's specific skill tree, you'll also find special abilities that you can unlock and power up for each character. Once you start to unlock more of these abilities, you'll see that there's a lot of variety in the loadouts you can have for a lot of them. For example, if you play as Luffy, you'll be able to pick between his different special attacks and transformations like Second Gear, Tank Man, or Snake Man. Not to mention the other stat boosts you can also add for increased damage, defense, or other bonuses, like having an advantage against specifically giant characters. All of these tools help you to mix and match based on what character you're playing as and what enemies you'll be facing. My favorite mechanic in fights has to be the ability to cancel your combos by using a dash in between your attacks. Just be wary that your dashes are going to deplete your stamina bar quite a lot, but if you do focus on increasing your stamina bar, it leads to you having some serious combo potential if you choose your characters wisely. Something really fun is that the characters are all separated into different playstyles. You can be a power type like Luffy who pushes his way through enemies with brute force. Then there's also speed characters like Sanji who are obviously much faster. But don't get that confused because that is only for pre-time skip Sanji, because post-time skip Sanji is actually a sky type due to him being able to use skywalk. And sky types are given the advantage of being able to maneuver around the battlefield from above and to rain down damage much easier. And finally we have the technique type, which is a little bit harder to explain in general. These are the characters who are best for those who like to be more strategic in fights. Characters like Law or Chopper are some examples of characters who can use setups and capitalize on attacks within their combos. The types you choose are more of a preference, but I can't say that there's any one type that I wouldn't want to play as. Like sure, I'd much rather play as a power type character like Zoro instead of Kaido, but there isn't any one thing that makes a certain type more overpowered than any other. Well, sort of. There's one interesting thing for Luffy in particular, and that's that he has some qualities from a few different types within his transformations. Just like Second Gear increases his speed, he becomes more like a speed type when it's active. And the same thing for Fourth Gear, which gives him some of the advantages of a sky type. And maybe you could see that as being overpowered, but he is the main character, so it's not too surprising. Keep in mind that each of those transformations will fill out a spot where you could add in a special move instead, so the options can definitely vary depending on the situation. Even outside of the battles within the story mode, you also get a different mode that's perfect for stocking up on materials to level everyone up. The treasure logs are the extra missions that you're given to help you grind for gear while unlocking extra characters. I'm not a huge fan of characters being gated behind this mode, because it means that you'll have to sink in quite a few hours just to get a bozo like Buggy the Clown on your roster. But it's not a bad idea to jump in and have fun testing out some different combos and characters that you otherwise wouldn't have in the story mode. There's also local co-op for most missions, and I did end up playing through the game twice just to test it out. Other than the split screen making it harder to see the map, I think co-op works perfectly within this series. Since you'll be spending plenty of time grinding out levels anyway, it's helpful knowing that you don't have to be forced to do it alone. And as far as grinding is concerned, there's not much of a reason to grind if you don't care about leveling up and unlocking extra characters. Some other Musou games like the Hyrule Warrior series tend to have a ton of unlockable outfits, characters, and weapons locked behind a seemingly endless stream of content. And there's not anywhere close to as much of that here, but I don't see that as a bad thing, because Pirate Warriors 4 was a perfect way for me to ease myself back into binging One Piece once again. With the anime having some amazing fights recently, I think it's the perfect time to jump back in and look forward to being caught up at some point. If you expected anything wild or groundbreaking from this game, sadly that's not the case here. But it is great for the fans of either Warriors titles or even just One Piece fans. Again, it does suck that the story's ending doesn't feel truly complete, but it still serves as being a great piece of fan service. But what do you think about Pirate Warriors 4? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe for more videos just like this one, and I'll see you all in the next video.